We've all had our lives disrupted in ways we never expected. And this pandemic has made us consider more deeply many things in our lives we used to take for granted. The comfort of hugging your friends, the joy of dinner out in a restaurant, and the steady supply of an abundance of food. Those who work the land, plant the crops, harvest the fields, raise the animals, catch the fish, they keep the world fed. And we're accustomed to getting what we want when we want it. We always assume the food producers will be there and that shelves will be stocked with food from all over the world. This pandemic has exposed the vulnerabilities of our food supply chain. What happens when workers get sick and when processing plants close down, when migrant workers no longer show up? David Akin looks at the impact.
Southern Alberta, cattle country.
To me, there's not a prettier place in the world. We're right on the edge of the foothills.
Bob Lowe and his family have been on these grasslands for more than 100 years.
I guess cattle are kind of in my blood. Both sides of the family have been in the cattle business since before the turn of the century.
But times have rarely been as tough. Lowe and other beef cattle ranchers are running out of room on their farms. The problem? The handful of meatpacking facilities that process the country's beef are running well under capacity, as those plants struggle to keep their workforces free of COVID-19.
Yep, no, that's the bottleneck.
The Cargill plant just up the road from Lowe's ranch has been the most high-profile processor to run into trouble, but there's similar issues for beef ranchers, hog farmers, and poultry growers all across the country. Animals that should have been shipped to market weeks ago continue to grow and continue to cost thousands of dollars every day to feed. Lowe made it through the BSE or mad cow crisis of the early 2000s, but this crisis is one for the ages.
I think mentally it's probably worse.
After mad cow hit, 27,000 beef farmers packed it in, and 5 million acres of grassland pasture disappeared, sold to developers or put to other uses. And that crisis was a relatively simple one to fix. Canada just had to get its beef back to foreign markets.
This thing, it's global in nature for one thing, so, half of our production goes out of country, but this is affecting those other countries too. So what that's going to do in the end, we don't really know. I mean, we've got demand for our product is there. Can it get there? We have no idea.
On the other side of the country, in the outport of Bay Bulls, just south of St. John's, Jason Sullivan readies his Atlantic Outlaw for the crab fishery that's about to open.
I fish and crab about, I guess, off and on, since I'm a kid, but, full time the last 20 years.
Those who farm the sea are also facing stiff economic headwinds. The Atlantic Outlaw can hold 30,000 pounds of crab that would have fetched as much as $6 a pound before the pandemic. But crab is a high-end product sold to casinos, cruise ships, restaurants, markets that have all crashed. Now, Sullivan might get $3 a pound.
Then you got your bait cost, which is $2.50 a pound, which is, so the price of bait is nearly as much as we're getting for the crab we're catching.
Then there's the cost of fuel, food, mortgage on the boat. For some fishermen, it might not even pay to put their boats in the water this year. And meanwhile, there's the challenge of keeping fishing crews safe from COVID-19. Sleeping quarters for 8 are below decks, and it's mighty snug.
It's certainly not the Ritz-Carlton.
And the galley for Sullivan's crew, well, it's a tight squeeze if everyone's at the table at once.
It's just like a little camper, really.
Health authorities have issued some guidelines for fishermen.
It's not even practical even to have these rules for us. They don't work. It's just impossible to do the distance on a boat.
Sullivan says other suggestions were absurd.
And it was kind of embarrassing to be honest with you. I mean, don't share the same toothbrush and stuff like that. And I mean, my God, we are living in rural Newfoundland, but we might have grew up in the woods, but we didn't eat the bushes. We don't share the same toothbrushes or anything in general. So I don't know why, but that's the kind of stuff that they came out with.
Back on land at the country's vegetable and fruit farms, the safety challenge is a bit more manageable.
Masks, gloves, and sanitization.
But these farmers have a different problem, a labor shortage. Nick DiGirolamo and his family have been growing veggies and herbs since the early 1960s.
It's a life, okay? You've done this your whole life. Like, I mean, my brother and I, and my son, and my dad still, he's 95, he's still on the property, and we work 7 days a week, okay? Even Christmas Day, I show up here.
But during planting season, that's right now, and during harvesting, DiGirolamo and his family cannot do it all themselves. They bring in highly trained workers from Mexico.
We need them, that's all there is to it. We can't not get Canadians to do the work on a continuous basis.
Normally, more than 25,000 temporary foreign workers help Canada's farmers every year. Most come from Mexico, but also from Caribbean and other Latin American countries. They do jobs that Canadians will not do or cannot do.
Everybody says you're getting unskilled labor, but they're not unskilled labor because they've been coming here and doing the same jobs for years, okay, and coming back to the same farms. And they know how to pick an apple and how to treat it gently. They know how to pick a berry without squeezing it. They know how to pick a tomato without sticking their fingernails in it.
This is Ishmael's 8th year working for Nick.
He's a good person, good boss. He's a good friend.
But this year, several thousand of those vital agricultural workers just are not coming to Canada because of the pandemic. And those that did come had to be quarantined for 14 days at the expense of their employers. The shortage of agricultural workers and their delay in getting to Canada means that some crops simply did not get planted.
I think there's going to be a shortage of fresh fruits and vegetables in the fall.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Bob Lowe tries to put it all in perspective.
A little note to our customers, to the people that go to the grocery store and buy our product. It's perfectly safe. We've got a problem getting it to you, but that'll be fixed. And don't lose faith in the food chain. It's still there. It just needs a little bit of fixing.